competing. When we come to autobiographies in 2023, it's competing with the autobiographies for politicians. Now, if you're a politician, they're very sure. They know this is a book that's going to sell, because everybody wants to know why was the election lost? You know, why did so and so win the election?
Most of the set books that we did, and maybe, you know, like people in the room can start sharing the set books they did, a lot of them were by foreign authors. I did Government Inspector by a guy called Nikolai Gogol. I don't even know whoever that is or whatever that name is from. Then I think there was another one closer to home from South Africa, Mind Boy.
Oh, Mind Boy.
Yeah, by Peter Abrams. And on the English side, I just don't remember doing any book by a local author, unless maybe there's one that I'm missing. Kiswahili, of course, you're forced to use local author because of the language. You know, I did Kisima cha Giningi, Shamba la Wanyama, there was Amezidi and Visiki. But yeah, there's just generally, you know, like we read books that don't belong to us. People read about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Who are the Seven Dwarfs? Who is Snow White? Ruth, what books did you do in high school?
I think I'm privileged in that sense because I read Kenyan authors, but they were very to a good extent Western.
Okay.
But was what were the authors you did, the set books that were being examined?
The River and the Source.
Okay.
Kenyan.
Okay.
Burdens.
Oh yeah, Burdens.
Was Kenyan.
There's Francis Ibuga.
I don't even remember.
There was The River and the Source. There was Burdens. There was The Rain Gods and Other Stories.
Yes.
Those were our English books.
Yeah.
And then I think Animal Farm.
Animal Farm is George Orwell, though. That's not a Kenyan author.
I did not do Animal
So,
Farm.
I'm not sure. I know I read Animal Farm. I'm not sure if I read it as a novel or as I did it. But then in our Swahili books were Amezidi.
Siku Njema.
Siku Njema, yeah.
Siku Njema, yeah. But Siku Njema.
I think Amezidi was bad. Amezidi was bad.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah, Amezidi was bad.
No. I think Amezidi was good because Amezidi had more poetry in it. Siku Njema, for me, was bad because that guy was just so pure. He didn't do any single bad thing in life.
But I think it made us like hope for a better day, because and the misamiatis in that book was so good.
I get that, but then nobody lives in their life on just doing holy things without sinning in any way.
A ton of people
especially
do.
Ali can defy.
I will say no to that, Mika, because
wewe niko sure ushaidanganya mzazi ukachukua shilingi 5 extra ya change ukanunua maembe.
Actually, I wish you know, like no, I was very pure in things.
So I think when it comes to our set books as Kenyans, it's really deep. It's deep because what you guys are talking about is now our generation, and why you are able to buy books. I'm able to write a book because the curriculum now introduced us to Kenyan books. If you ask your dad, if your dad is 60 and above, like my father, they never did any Kenyan book, not Ngugi, nobody. So when they went to when they were doing literature, they were doing books like A Tale of Two Cities. They're doing Romeo and Juliet.
Of Mice and Men.
Yeah. So what is it called?
Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Julius Caesar, all those.
Yeah, Julius Caesar and all that. So what it did to them, these books were not familiar to them as Africans.
Not relatable.
No.
And so they hated literature. And so our parents never read out of school. Children do what their parents do. So for me, I never once saw my dad pick a book and read it, because the culture they had in school is the books that they were introduced to that were not examinable when they're talking about literature were all books that were very foreign. And I remember even when we were growing up, when I was a child, just as he said, the books that we were exposed to had to do with Rapunzel, had to do with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You know, it had to do with all that. And we grew up
Peter
with
and Jane. I don't know who those are.
Jack and the Beanstalk.
Jack and Jane went up
Oh my word, I remember.
You know,
memories.
Books, when you look at those books, these people that are in these books don't look like us.
But Goldilocks looks like oh, sorry.
No,
but you know,
we'll come to that. So now, what it does? So for our parents, it made them hate literature. They didn't know that it's possible to pick a book and read it outside of curriculum. And so because we were watching them, we struggled a little bit with literature as kids. So when now we got into school and now we were being introduced to literature, I think the generations before us had this book, Things Fall Apart by Things Fall. I think Things Fall Apart. Chinua Achebe.
I won't say when I did it, but I did it.
So Chinua Achebe's book was actually one of the very
it
first.
Sure was.
Okoko, sorry. And that is why it has been seared in everybody's memory, and that's why that book, everybody remembers that book. It's like an African Bible when it comes to literature. It was an amazing book because somebody complained about that, and not in Kenya, in Nigeria. They complained about why is it that our generation guys are doing books that have nothing to do with Africa. And because this movement came from Nigeria, it came into Kenya. And so Kenyans, because we copy, rather than taking Ngugi, we took who? We took Chinua Achebe. Nothing wrong with Chinua Achebe.
That guy is a legend. We had Betrayal in the City.
Yeah, you guys had actually Betrayal in the City and
Betrayal in the City. It was Things Fall Apart.
Yes, they came at the same time because of this revolution, and that was the beginning of African literature now in Africa. Because before it was the West that was recognizing these guys. You know, and so now because now we now came to Amezidi, Visiki, Nini, that is why now our generation we are able to just walk into to walk into a library and I mean not a bookshop and pick books. We as Kenyans we are still a little bit behind, and I will tell you why is because writing Kenyan books is difficult, and I've told you why it's difficult. When you go to countries like West Africa, they are supported more. I mean, the literal space is really supported by the government when it comes to policies, when it comes to their manuscripts and all that. And anytime a society accepts their things, everybody else will accept.